afternoon. I'm Nancy McCaochan, and welcome to Living Karma Yoga. This is a program that brings you all that the yoga world has to offer, from asana, which is posture, to pranayama, which are breathing techniques, to meditation, mudras, travel, cooking, and sometimes even fashion, and so much more to help you take your yoga off the mat so that you can live a life of joy, prosperity, equanimity. All of these things are the promises of yoga, and they all contribute to a life that we all so truly deserve. My guest today is Mindy Eisenberg, and Mindy has been a yoga instructor and yoga therapist since 2004. She's the founder and director of Growing Yoga Moves MS program, and community in southeastern Michigan. And Yoga Moves MS is for multiple sclerosis population, and she's been extremely instrumental in helping people who are experiencing this condition live more equanimous, more joyful lives. Wouldn't you say that, Mindy? I have a couple of her students in our current teacher training program, and they are just so grateful for the whole program and for you. She also provides small group adaptive yoga therapy classes for over 70 students per week with MS. She leads an annual fundraiser for Yoga Moves MS. She offers private yoga therapies to seniors, those with MS and neuromuscular conditions. She's also the author of Yoga Moves Everybody, which is this amazing project of love. How many years did that take you to do?
Oh, about 5.
About 5. That's typical. That's really typical. And she's a former administrator at the University of Michigan Medical Center, which is something I didn't know about you. She's an MBSR qualified teacher, and what that means is she's mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. She holds a certificate from the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and is registered with the Yoga Alliance at the Experience 500 level. She also holds a master's degree in health services administration from the University of Michigan. I'm very impressed with all of this cool stuff. And today she's going to talk to us about mindfulness and how mindfulness can be useful in helping us lead more healthful lives. And Mindy, how would you describe mindfulness to someone who's never experienced it before?
So it's been defined as moment-to-moment awareness without judgment. So there's an intention to be alert and aware, and the two qualifications are with compassion, so with kindness towards ourselves, and without judgment.
Okay. How does that differ from our normal state of mind?
Well, there's a recent study, in fact, that came out by Harvard that showed that 47% of the time our mind wanders.
Okay. So being mindful helps us come back, helps us focus?
To where we are. Like right now, we're sitting in this chair. So, a way to become more aware is to press down through our feet, to notice our seat touching the chair, notice our breath. It's a way to be right here
and right
in this
now.
moment, right now.
And so why do we need to be taught that?
Because the natural tendency of our mind is to go elsewhere.
Okay.
Like you might be talking and I might be going, oh, that's nice over there.
Or if there were a real window there, we might be both looking out the window with our minds going, and we'll be thinking about something else. Yeah.
So it's easy to get down on ourselves about the mind going everywhere, but it's such a natural thing to do. So we have to keep telling ourselves that this is the monkey mind, and we can strengthen this muscle through mindfulness practices that we can bring right into our daily life.
Okay, and I have a quote here too, because I looked this up a little bit when I was helping do some research and publicity for the next program that you're doing. It says that just as we strengthen the muscles in our body, we strengthen the muscles of our mind. So it's a form of conditioning. Is that correct?
Absolutely. They find that the cortex that we're strengthening actually gets thicker, and that term neuroplasticity has come to the forefront lately. And many of the studies show how the amygdala, the part of our brain that has fear, will get bigger when there's lots of fear, and it'll actually shrink when we do practices like meditation and mindfulness.
Really? That's really cool.
It's super cool. It's super cool.
So can you explain what neuroplasticity is for people who may not have heard of it?
So the mind is, people thought, at one time that we couldn't change the actual brain and the functions of the mind, and now we know that we can through processes like mindfulness. So we can actually shape the brain. The brain is not static, it can change.
Okay, so which goes back to yoga, because one of the yoga's most oftenly translated, or it's said, the second sutra is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So one of my favorite translations is yoga is the ability to direct our minds, and in some ways to control the mind. Okay. So mindfulness works to strengthen the immune function. How does that work? Do you know?
It's pretty cool. So it's actually, there was a study by Davidson in Wisconsin who looked at immune function, flu shots, and neuroplasticity, and tied them all together. And what they found was that the group that had practiced mindfulness, the flu shots were more effective, and the change in that amygdala I was talking about correlated with the effectiveness of the flu shot. So they're all interrelated. And yes, mindfulness has been shown to improve immune function. I've noticed I don't get sick as much. I don't want to jinx myself or anything, but since meditating, there's been a reduction in getting sick, because getting sick is very often related to stress, and practices such as mindfulness work at, the reason it was called stress reduction by Jon Kabat-Zinn was because this was a program that helped reduce the signs and symptoms of stress.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about Jon, or in the audience at home, about Jon Kabat-Zinn and the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. When it started, where it's practiced, who is he, et cetera, et cetera.
So Jon Kabat-Zinn is one of the fathers of mindfulness in this country. There's Jack Kornfield as well, out at Spirit Rock. But Jon studied mindfulness and developed mindful-based stress reduction at the University of Massachusetts, which is now housed in the medical school. He started that 30 years ago. And he started it as a result of wanting to work with people who were in pain. And he asked the physicians at the University of Massachusetts, how would you feel, how many patients can you help through your pain clinic? And their answer was around 20 to 30% that they could help with pain. And he said, well, what if I gave you a place to send your patients? And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. So he started to realize, as he developed this program in the pain clinic, it became mindful-based stress reduction, and they noticed about a 30% reduction in pain.
Wow.
So it was an aha moment.
So was this for people with chronic illness?
Chronic pain.
Chronic pain, okay.
Chronic pain.
Okay. And how does that work, do you know? I know you talked about the amygdala and the fear faction, but how does that translate into pain and work with the pain?
I think what you're asking is, and how this translates is actually in the brain, because the response to pain is very complicated. And even when we have acute pain and we have chronic pain, So acute pain's like stubbing your toe and ouch, that hurts.
Right.
Chronic pain has been going on a long time, and some people define it as 3 months, lasting 3 months or 6 months, whatever that number may be. And then the actual cause of the pain can go away, but the brain and the body are still responding like the pain, the cause of the pain is still there.
Wow.
So mindfulness can come in to actually retrain the brain to respond in a more healthy way.
So does it, and this is not a very well formulated question, but does it doesn't just erase the pain?
No. So that's a really good question, because the coping skills become different.
Okay.
To stop, to take a breath is one of the initial skills. And then over time, you start to become aware that you're not your pain. That's a huge light bulb when that goes off for people. So the response changes to the pain.
Okay, and then you mentioned you're not your pain. So I've been talking to my yoga students about finding a space inside themselves. In yoga, we call it the witness, and noticing their emotions and kind of finding a space from that emotion so that you're not identified with the emotion. And I know in my own thoughts, and I'm sure it happens to you and to everybody, you're thinking and you're thinking and you're thinking, and then you're not aware you're thinking, but you sort of become that thought, you know, worry about children, you start thinking about it, and all of a sudden it's in every pore of your body, and you're just consumed by the worry. So is that what you mean by becoming?
You can become your pain, and people identify with their pain. There's a lot of self-judgment and shame that very often can come along with that. So when we learn mindfulness, and very often it's through a body scan or meditation, you start to realize that, it's one of my students described it almost like in third person, that they became third person to their pain.
Oh, that's
I thought
awesome.
it was an interesting description, that you could take a step away from it and not own it.
Okay. And what tradition does mindfulness come out of? Is there a
Buddhism?
Buddhism? Okay.
It is, but so what Jon Kabat-Zinn did, because he was in a clinical environment, is he took away the lingo that is attached to Buddhism. And it made it more appealing to the clinicians and the medical and the nursing staff.
And has he done, since he's in a clinic, does he do follow-up studies with people? Are they hooked up to electrodes? How do they?
Absolutely. Now, Jon is actually retired.
Okay. That's a shame.
It is a shame. He does go around and speak around the world. In fact, he's still in much demand. And there have been people that he trained that have taken over the center. And really, mindfulness has taken on a life of its own. And there's been thousands of studies since when he started. The last time I did a silent retreat, which is part of what's requirement to become a qualified teacher, is you have to do several 7 to 10 silent retreats to become certified, and 2 or 3 to become qualified. And so, what was my point to this? I'm losing my train of thought. I'm not mindful.
We're talking about the tradition that Jon comes from, and also the clinical studies that he's done.
Right. So at one of those retreats, that's how I got off of that. At one of the retreats, they did a presentation on the studies, and the slope is like this. It's upward, thousands of studies now, and they still consider it in its infancy. Okay. Because it takes thousands and thousands and thousands of studies. There's about 3,000 at this time on mindfulness that are showing how effective it can be. And so yes, people are sometimes, they've done MRIs of the brain, and they've done sleep studies because people are sleeping better. It helps insomnia. It helps pain, it helps anxiety. One of the initial studies was on psoriasis, which they were just blown away by because the control group was only doing very minimal. They were listening to recordings. They hadn't even attended a class. They were doing some recordings on mindfulness, and all of the participants had the light treatment for psoriasis. The people who had practiced just a little bit of mindfulness and did it while having those light treatments responded. Their psoriasis was alleviated.
Wow.
So much more than the others.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah.
Very, very exciting.
Yeah.
So what was entailed? What did those silent retreats entail?
You know, people get really scared about silent retreats, and in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, there's a day of it, and people get really scared about it. And then they do it, and they go, wow, I like that. The first time I had to be silent during a yoga training, it's like, this is actually kind of fun, not having to respond and just having, you know, some time with yourself. It depends where you go. They can be in different environments, and there's mindfulness walking. It's not just sitting for 24 hours a day. There's mindful eating, so quiet while eating, and the food just can taste so much more delightful. The spices become more vibrant. Colors become, wow, that blade of grass is standing out for me.
Right.
So it is kind of cool. The first few days can be really rough for people. You're coming from your active life to this retreat center where you're sitting for maybe a half hour, doing walking for a half hour. There's a whole routine doing some yoga for a certain period of time. There's rest time, so you can do what you want during that time, but you're not reading or writing or talking. So they ask you to put your cell phones away, and that's really tough for people.
It is, especially now. I mean, everybody's got one, and you're always looking at it. Even I'll look at it in the morning when I wake up and go, okay, text, well, I don't need to deal with that, you know, and it almost feels like you're lost without it.
Absolutely, and I have to admit, the first few days of it, I'm like wanting to peek at that thing, and my family would be like, put that away, put that away. So, yeah, it's a practice.
Yeah, I did 3 actually silent retreats in a slightly different tradition where no eye contact, no touching, no talking, no anything. And what I experienced was that real power of other people. I mean, I was aware of everybody else that I was sitting with and that I was living with, but without the need to talk. And so that social responsibility that we carry with us all the time when we're with another person to say something, it was really delightful not to have that, to be prevented from thinking, okay, I need to say something, because we couldn't.
Yeah, even
liberating.
like opening the doors for someone. We also don't have eye contact, which I found very difficult. I like looking at people's eyes.
Right, me too.
So open the door, and you don't say thank you. There's no thank you. You just open the door, let them pass through, you pass through.
Right, and it's much more spacious.
It's much more spacious
too, and I think we all need that a little bit. Could you lead us in a mindful practice?
Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be long. It can be a minute. It can be that, you know, they'll hear the 3-minute mindfulness moments. So we usually start if we're going to go into a meditation of finding a comfortable seat. Okay. So they'll say alert seat. So spine is tall but relaxed. Relaxed. So we don't want to be tense like this. That would be hard to sit through and will immediately bring anxiety and discomfort into the body. So finding a comfortable seat, and very often in yoga as well, we want to bring the hips above the knees so that the spine can be tall. And the eyes can be softened or not, meaning maybe a half gaze, or the eyes can close. So you can decide yourself whether you want to give your self the permission to close your eyes. And then I usually have people, you know, feel their feet, feel their seat.
So why don't you teach the people at home?
Okay. So everyone find a comfortable seat. Or if you prefer, you can stand.
Okay, really?
Sure. There's some people, so in these silent retreats, you know, sitting can be a long time. Right. And the other thing is people fall asleep.
Right. Yes.
Right?
So you don't want to lie down.
Especially during the body scan.
Okay.
Because it's long. And so if you know, John will say, if you know you're going to fall asleep, stand up. And we are not allowed to teach the body scan until we don't fall asleep.
Okay.
So you might have to stand because the body immediately, you lay down and it wants to turn off. So find a comfortable seat, or you can stand, or you can in fact lay down, because we're just going to do this for a few minutes now.
Okay.
How long do we have?
I'm not sure, but how about just for a minute?
Okay.
Can we do that?
Sure.
Because otherwise it gets,
Right.
for people at home, a little bit boring to just
Yes.
be still with us here.
So softly closing the eyes, or not. And the first thing we do is we turn into the breath. So we notice being right here, and a way to do that is to come to the breath. So feeling the breath as it is, different from a yoga class where we might try to change the breath. We're being with it without trying to change it. So noticing the sensation of the breath. And the breath most often has the most sensation either by feeling the belly expand on the inhale and descend on the exhale. Or for some people, they feel the breath more with the air coming in and out through the nose. So feeling the air travel upward and exhale out through the nose. So you might notice just right now this has a calming effect, but at the same time we're alert and aware. Feeling this wave, being right here, breathing in and breathing out. And knowing that the mind will waver, because that's what the mind does. And so when you notice that it does that, you notice it. That's the first part of being mindfulness, noticing. That is an opportunity to come back to the present moment each time the mind wanders, without scolding it, without judgment, saying, come on back, mind. Come back to the breath. Right here. Right now. Inhaling and exhaling. Feeling the sensation of the breath. You might notice sensations in your body. And you can choose to be with them, feel them, or return to feeling the breath. And as we end a meditation, it's important to express gratitude. Gratitude for giving yourself this time. It's a pause in your day, a type of recalibration or rebalancing. Very helpful to do before going into an important meeting or having an interview on television. So we express this gratitude and compassion for taking care of ourselves. That's
Beautiful.
what yoga is. That's what a mindful moment is. And it's so simple. Anyone can do it. And you can't do it wrong. I love John's quote. There's more right with you than wrong with you.
That makes me want to cry.
I know. There's more right with you than wrong with you, as long as you're breathing.
Right, right. And one of the effects, and I do this at home sometimes when because I'm a type A and trying to get everything done, and sometimes my body is just like really, really tired, and the brain and my will keep saying, oh, just 5 more minutes. of this or that. But I find if I sit still like this, it really replenishes my energy, even for 5 minutes. And anybody, as you said, can probably do it at home, right?
It truly is an act of self-care. Now, it can be done by having a drink of water. You know, so drinking water, mindful eating, mindful walking. Some people are like, I just can't sit, I can't sit.
Right.
That's where the walking comes in so helpful, or eating or brushing our teeth. It all can be done mindfully. Really taking a sip of the water, feeling the water in the mouth. You know, what temperature is it? What's its texture? And how does it feel sliding down?
Everything that we just generally in our daily lives don't pay attention to because we're in our heads and we're thinking about something else.
It's become routine.
Right. And we need to wrap up. We only have 3 more minutes to go. But you're leading a mindfulness-based stress reduction 8-week course starting in January, right?
Yes, at Karma.
At Karma. So this is just a teaser of what people might expect, and the benefits are really, really phenomenally, and they're countless. There is homework, which means you have to go home and practice. And
there is
are
homework, so it's serious. You have to practice the homework. Otherwise, you won't get out of it. You know, you'll learn, but it won't be a first-hand experience.
Well, and otherwise you're not retraining your brain, which is really what it's all about. And 8 weeks is kind of the minimum amount of time that you need to really change things in your system.
In fact, this was studied, the 8-week, to show that it is effective to actually change the brain.
And we have to say thank you. Thank you all for joining us. If you want to learn more about Karma Yoga, see our schedule, go to www.karma-yoga.net. Mindy's program will be online there pretty soon if you wanted to sign up for it. And if you have any questions more about mindfulness, you can contact the studio, info@karma-yoga.net. Thank you for watching. Thanks, Mindy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Good.